Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Nerd News. I'm Special Correspondent Ryan LaPlante, and I'm here with Special Correspondent Tom McGee.
So special, so correspondent. Very well.
And we're here to cover all of the nerdy news that has been nerded this week. We're starting on a bit of a downer note. We're just going to acknowledge this, but we got to celebrate a pretty great guy who's affected a lot of nerd culture. We lost Tony Todd, and Tony Todd rules. Tony Todd, his biggest role is probably the Candyman. He showed up in a bunch of the Final Destination movies. He's done voiceover for just about everybody ever.
Voice of Venom in Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation.
Oh, it's so good. Tom, do you have any particular Tony Todd highlight memories?
Yeah, I was going to say, what's funny for me is I haven't seen Candyman still. It's on my list of like movies I want to pay attention to, which means I just don't get to it. But what's weird is he legitimized Final Destination 1 for me, because when he showed up, I went, oh, shit, okay. And I feel like when I was thinking about it, when I read the news that he'd passed away, I was thinking about all the roles I've seen him in, and he's just one of those actors where when he shows up, I'm like, okay, good. We're in good hands now. And particularly because he's that guy for horror. He just elevates everything, that voice, that presence. It was just always so powerful whenever he showed up. Anything in The Rock, he's fucking incredible. And just, he's one of those actors where you show up and like my shoulders drop an inch, because I'm like, all right, cool. We got Tony Todd on the scene. So what's funny is even though I didn't know him from like his most iconic role, he's still, it's a wonderful turn in Final Destination. He plays death itself, maybe, or maybe death's best friend, or maybe like a death elf. Who knows? But he's fucking great. And
I heard him on a convention panel. He's not 100% sure on what his Final Destination role. He was not, but he felt like he might be an angel. He wasn't sure, but he knew that the creators of Final Destination had said if the next movie got made, if there was going to be one more Final Destination, they were going to answer all the questions about his character, and I know he was psyched about it. So,
and they are making another film, and I don't know if he recorded anything for it or if he shot scenes for it. But and most of his Venom performance ended up on the cutting room floor, which is insanity, because you have Tony fucking Todd voicing Venom, which I didn't know I needed until they announced it. I was like, oh yeah, that's the Venom voice. And then due to the plot of that game, there's a lot of like Venom's host talking, which is fine narratively, I suppose, but it kills me.
Not when you have Tony Todd.
And I'm hopeful that they're just going to recycle all of it for like, there's a rumored Venom DLC, or like, like the Miles Morales game was like a smaller one, just a Lethal Protector game that's just Venom. And I'm hoping that's just all Tony Todd floor lines. But yeah, I just, between like him and Lance Reddick, two of my favorite voice actors, are gone. So we need to protect Keith David with every fiber of our beings.
We are all taking
like
bullets for
David.
Silky
voiced, like heroic or villainous character with that booming voice. Oh man. So but how about you, Ryan? You got a Tony Todd connection?
I do. So first of all, I'm devastated because Dell and I have been slowly working on a scripted story set in the 1930s that we wanted to make into a series. And the only celebrity name we had down, I was like, I would cough up dough to get Tony Todd to record this villain. So it was like, and he would have been gettable if we could make it work. It would have been exciting. So devastating there. But Tony Todd, I saw him speak on panels, and more importantly, I met him in person in an absurd anecdote that is worth sharing. So I went to a horror convention in New York for a film festival. This was back in 2016, and it was just an absolute dive of a film festival. The festival was on the third story of a hotel where the entire convention was on the main floor, and you had to cross the lobby to go. So like no one knew this film festival was happening. I met 2 or 3 other filmmakers there who were really great, who I'm still in touch with now. But we had gone to this festival, and our mutual friend Nicolette Pierce had gone with me. I will name drop her. She does a bunch of film stuff. She's great. And she had come with me to just be like, sure, I'm in the movie for like 2 seconds. Why not go to this thing? And it was just like the screenings weren't there, but there was a VIP event that I think people had paid a lot of money to attend that was held in one of the convention rooms. And Nicolette and I had bought flasks and gotten kind of drunk because there was no bar that was open at this event. So we could not get in because though we were in the film festival, we were not considered VIPs. However, I'm pretty shameless, and Nicolette is even more shameless. So we went and discovered that the next ballroom over, the door was open. And inside, it was like there was a kitchen to the left, and to the right of this empty ballroom was just an open doorway into the VIP room. And it turned out this was where servers were going back to the kitchen to restock snacks. So Nicolette and I just walked in very confidently, walked across the ballroom, and just walked into the VIP thing through the back. So we crashed this VIP event. And I don't know if anybody's done these conventions, but there are a couple of tables. There's like usually a very sad food spread. And then everybody kind of stands around and waits for these celebrities to come through and say hi to everybody and kind of chat. And they just do a little bit of like handshaking and like just nice chit chat. And they had a couple of different horror icons who were there, but the one that stood out to me was Tony Todd. And it was amazing because to me, I was like, Tony Todd is a legend. I know who Tony Todd is. I don't think I'd seen Candyman at that point. I'd seen it now because I rewatched it before the remake. But I just was like, that's Tony Todd. And Nicolette had no clue who he was. And I did not have a chance to explain when he came up to our table with two other people. And he was like, hi, nice to meet you. And she was like, well, who are you? She was drunk at this table. And he was like, I'm Tony Todd. She was like, well, don't you want to know who I am, Tony? just like sarcastically, drunkenly at 4:30 in the afternoon, tried to high roll Tony Todd on who was more important at the table. And I was dying inside. And Tony and everybody with him busted a gut, and he was so kind and gracious and treated her like she was the celebrity at the table, and then managed to like Mr. President his own way out of like being really charming, but also eventually ending the conversation and moving on. And then I was like, do you know who that is? And she's like, no. And I was like, do you know the name Tony Todd? No. And I was like, get your IMDb out. And she flipped down and saw who he was and saw the sheer number of credits. It was like, oh, no. I was like, yeah, people paid to see that guy, not you. You made it seem like he paid money to meet you. And then for the rest of the time we were at the convention, if we wandered around and Tony spotted us, Tony be at the table going, oh, my God, it's Nicolette. Just like, it's amazing. So, Tony Todd. Hero. A hero when you meet him, just all you would hope for from a celebrity of that ilk and that style. And he sounded just like all his recordings in person. Just a lovely human. R.I.P. Tony. Just a big fan. Devastated, A, for the loss of him in general for all of us, and B, also because, fuck, it would have been cool to work with him. He would have been really, really neat.
At least we still got Nicolette, though, right? Like, that's what Tony would have wanted.
That's what we need. Starring in Final Destination, the reboot. Nicolette Pierce, some lady who was rude to him at an event.
I mean, I'd watch it. That sounds great. We've got a showbiz and tabletop heavy show for you all here today. It's not a lot of video game news this week that we haven't already covered. I've been playing Call of Duty, but there's nothing to report other than I'm still pretty good, and that felt great. So yay that, I guess. Neither of us have played through Dragon Age yet, so womp womp. But there's been a ton of showbiz news, and there's also some tabletop stuff we didn't get to last week that we want to cover this week. So that's kind of what we're about today. Starting with a truly amazing series of events. Like just every so often, the world aligns itself in just a perfect way. And that happened this week with the merchandise for the upcoming musical film, which apparently is wonderful, and my household is very excited to see. Wicked. Ryan, why don't you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite things that's happened, and I desperately want one of these dolls, so I just want to make it clear to all of the world that if you have one of these and are willing to send it into the show, we will be displaying this very dramatically. Mattel put out dolls for the Wicked movie that were released through the U.S. I think one of the primary places was through Target. And they made a mistake on the packaging, which is my favorite thing I've heard in a while. They're arguing it's a misprint, and it's so clearly an error, which is they meant for the box to suggest that people go to wickedthemovie.com, which is the website for the film. However, they accidentally printed it with it saying to go to wicked.com, which is a porn production company. So if they actually went to it, it goes to a you need to be 18 or older page. And if you click next, it landed on an ad for the upcoming porn movie, Kenzie Loves Girls 2. Which I think is not going to open in quite as many theaters as Wicked.
I imagine they're defying gravity in that one too.
Oh,
you know,
Kenzie loves defying gravity.
And Ryan, I looked up these dolls on Amazon just to see if I could snag one for you for Christmas, and immediately found the classic Amazon warning of price higher than typical. Because everyone's getting in on the misprint dolls. I, as a longtime toy collector, I've always loved the weird toy fuck ups. Very famously, there was, when I was in elementary school, someone swapped the voice boxes in a bunch of Barbies and G.I. Joes, because the voice boxes and the Barbies it was like shopping spree Barbie or something. It was literally like the Malibu Stacy joke from The Simpsons, where it's just the most misogynistic shit coming out of Barbie's mouth. Like, I don't like math, I like to shop. So they swapped it into G.I. Joes to just highlight how ridiculous it was. So you had these Barbies coming out being like, we gotta stop Cobra. And these Joes being like, I love to shop. And I was like, this is good. This is what we need more of.
Yeah,
and then there was I think it was a Furby someone swapped the voice box for as well. So it was just a cussing Furby. So every so often this happens. As a parent of a small child, horrifying, but also kind of hilarious, as long as the kid doesn't click, I am over 18.
I
so
just
don't do that.
love when Hollywood cheaps out and pays a horrific price, because this is really funny. Knowing that they went, well, at some point somebody went, we're doing Wicked. Well, Wicked.com is already bought by this production company. I don't know if we're going to be able to get it. It'd probably be pretty expensive. And somebody went, don't worry, it's not a big deal. Just get wickedthemovie.com. This won't bite us in the ass. And then this happens.
When people search Wicked, they're going to know. They're going to know which one they're searching. It's going to be fine. No one uses the internet anymore anyway.
But yeah, so apparently it was Glinda and Elphaba. So it was the big toys. But they are already selling for anywhere.
Fiero doesn't have the error on the back? He's not dancing through life to wicked.com? No?
One of the flying monkeys. He loves
shit,
porn.
I got to return the Fiero doll I just bought for you. Fuck.
But yeah, so they're already paying on. They're popping up on eBay for anywhere from $100 to $800, which is crazy. Obviously, they're going to be pretty widely spread. So for anybody who's racing out there thinking, I want to get one of these before they're gone, this is a full Target release. So this will have been pulled from shelves, but there were thousands and thousands and thousands of these. This is not a Boba Fett where there are only 4 that actually worked. Don't bet your house on this. This is not an investment. It's just very funny, which is why if anybody sees one on a shelf at a regular price, get yourself one and get one me too, like one for me too. I'll send you the price to have bought yours. I just want one for me.
And I gotta tell you, in the like don't bet your house on it thing, I once made this mistake in a gold rush moment. If you remember the cinematic masterpiece Wing Commander with Matthew Lillard and Freddie Prinze Jr.,
Two
it had
megastars.
Yes. It had the episode 1 trailer before it when I saw it in normal movies. And I went, holy shit, I got to see that again. This is going to be the greatest film ever made. So I got a couple of my buds and we drove 40 minutes to the big IMAX theater north of Toronto to see Wing Commander again, which sucked. We didn't want to see Wing Commander again, but we want to see that trailer. Trailer was not formatted for IMAX. We just had to sit through a more expensive version of Wing Commander on a larger screen. So don't be like me. Don't Wing Commander yourself on this one. But yes, if you find it at retail, go for it.
Yeah,
go to see the wizard.
Get it as a joke, and you should spend this is a joke amount of money.
Correct.
Not anything serious. But Tom, I'm seeing the next big thing here. I know you messaged me about this midweek. Oh,
yeah. So, as I mentioned, I have a lot of action figures on my desk, and I don't currently have her on display, but I do have her accessory, which is this Phoenix from the Dark Phoenix. And I mention this because Lucasfilm, in their ongoing quest to announce infinite Star Wars movies that never make it to screen, has announced a new trilogy from writer, director, producer, etc., Simon Kinberg, who's going to produce and write Star Wars. Now, he does have some good credits to his name. He did Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the movie version, of course, with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, which I would venture is like a good concept and 2 stars who happen to be married and have a lot of sexual tension at the time, rather than like, the script here is A+. But he is more famous in my books for this little Phoenix I held up earlier, because he has the rare distinction of not only writing Brett Ratner's X3 The Last Stand, which was a Dark Phoenix movie, and was generally terrible, but then also wrote Dark Phoenix, the X-Men First Class timeline Phoenix movie that hit a lot of the same beats. Simon Kinberg very famously shadow directed a lot of Days of Future Past when Bryan Singer was just fucking off being Bryan Singer. And so they gave him, the cast agreed to come back because they enjoyed working with him so much. So they gave him Apocalypse, which was a bit of a disaster, and then Dark Phoenix, which admittedly did get a little bit screwed over by having the same ending as Captain Marvel, so I had to reshoot a bunch of stuff. But what's really funny to me is, as a longtime, Scott and Gene,
Stan.
shipper and apologist, yes, Stan, thank you, seeing the same weird decisions happen twice, where it's like, oh, he is really hung up on like Professor X being a particular kind of like awful human, and then several beats for a film that didn't work just being done again happening. And this guy's got a Star Wars trilogy now, so it's going to be weird to see. There's no real information on this. It leaked just before not D23, but the Brazil, I think D5 or whatever, the Disney conference in Brazil. People thought maybe there'd be a full announcement. There wasn't. In theory, they're leaving the Skywalker series behind. Although
I was going to say they have said that. So they like what?
But
the
they have a Rey
Reporter
film
saying,
coming. Yeah. So like, there's a new Jedi Order film with Rey that's kind of happening over here that just lost its director, but is still, lost its writer, still has its director, still has her. Don't know what's going on with that. And then this trilogy could be anywhere, but it joins the mysterious, like the only announced Star Wars films we know of currently are Lando, which was a TV series that is now going to be a film that Donald Glover is developing, and
Rogue Squadron is back online again. She backed out, came back in, but it's purely theory. I don't think they have a release date.
Yeah, when Wonder Woman 3 got canceled, she mysteriously reappeared for Rogue Squadron, but there's no release date. This is the thing. There's like a Taika Waititi movie, no release date. There's a Rian Johnson trilogy, no release date. The only, like, we know this one is in active development ones, like Mandalorian and Grogu is happening. Lando is theoretically happening because it was being developed as a show and is now in film town.
Also,
so anyway,
I think Donald Glover's got the pull and the push to be able to make it happen if he's the name attached to it. They'd
particularly
be stupid not
because
to.
he's folding the Childish Gambino brand. He's done touring, he's done performing. He's had some health concerns, so I think the shift to movie is a natural one for him.
Yep, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith is shifting to an anthology series, so he's not back for the second season. He's still, I think, involved in EPing it, but he's not day-to-day on a TV set.
So I was a little bit taken aback by this and a little bit bummed out, but sometimes writers turn it around. I couldn't have put money down on Damon Lindelof turning into like The Leftovers and Watchmen Damon Lindelof after Prometheus and Lost Damon Lindelof. So I got hopes for Mr. Kinberg and that he pulls something interesting out. Star Wars is such a fucking vast place, and there's so much room for stories to tell. But man, the X-Men track record. I was going to say, if you want to hear some positives, because I did some research in this to find out what might be good about this. So yes, he's here. It's supposed to be brand new characters and a brand new story. It's not a direct continuation, although obviously characters can pop in and out. Who knows? Maybe this becomes the Rey movie, but I don't think so because I think Daisy Ridley, after doing the first movies, no, the Rey movie's a separate thing altogether. It's just whether Skywalkers get involved.
People might pop up, but I don't think they're going to bring back the original cast on that. But Kinberg has some more recent credits that are more solid. He co-created the animated series Star Wars Rebels with Dave Filoni, as well as Carrie Beck. So he was involved in that. And that's from 2014 to 2018. He also helped out on the relaunch of Star Wars, where he was an acting consultant on The Force Awakens. So he was involved in kind of the reboot. However we feel about The Force Awakens, we're just acknowledging that. He's also on the producer side. He did produce Logan and the first 2 Deadpool movies, among his other creative duties. And to tie this into last week's, he's also going into production on Edgar Wright's take on the Stephen King tale The Running Man for Paramount. And
did he write it?
He didn't, so I think he's just on the producer side. He might be doing that for Fox.
Okay.
Then the craziest thing about this is, and this may be a pro or a con, he's also helping to develop the rival Star Trek franchise for Paramount. So he stepped into that deal this spring, and he's keeping duties on both. So he will be working on Star Wars and Star Trek at the same time, which I think means he gets to do everything any of us has ever wanted to do our entire lives, all in 2024, which, like, dude, this is a bad year for everyone else. Why does just Simon Kinberg? He's the anchor being of this universe. Like, we're just here for Simon Kinberg to have a good time.
He is some kind of flaming bird rising from the ashes. I can't come up with a name for what that might be, but some kind of fiery bird coming out of ashes. Yeah, well, okay, I will say Rebels is generally viewed, I think, now amongst the fandom as like Clone Wars and Rebels seem to be pretty up there. And so that's good news. Historically, anytime someone has done both Star Trek and Star Wars, it is proven to be an excellent strategy. And I just hope he writes a full trilogy instead of, mystery boxing it like a certain Mr. Abrams did when he jumped ship from Trek to
handing it off to another filmmaker with no plan and another filmmaker with no plan.
And saying, like, whatever, do nothing. And then himself after they fired said other filmmaker. So anyway, again, I'm always excited for new Star Wars stuff. At this point, though, new Star Wars movies coming feels a bit like Winds of Winter is coming, where I'm like, until I actually see it,
correct,
I'm not going to get too excited or too fussed. That's that. So more Star Wars. We'll see.
My hope is if they announce, they'll have to announce a cast of, I think they'll have to get some name actors. I don't think they can coast on the Force Awakens of like, here's a bunch of people you've never heard of, because I don't think the Star Wars IP is best served right now by being like, here's new shit you've never heard of. Fingies crossed. Just get us other cool actors.
And again, based on the Days of Future Past set reports and other things, like, or was it the Apocalypse? Maybe it was Apocalypse he shadow directed. That would make more sense, because then he got Dark Phoenix. That was like the one more that everyone's like, we don't know. Regardless, though, anyone who can take a bunch of very high profile actors who are doing a genre film that they've all kind of outgrown at that point and save it from tanking. I mean, he didn't save the film. The film was terrible.
Save it from dissolution. It's easy for films to not get made.
But also that the actors of that caliber walked away being like, I will re-sign if I get to work with you again, is a very good sign of kind of who you are. And that probably speaks to his talents as a producer. And so hopefully we'll see that. But
you can't get that many jobs if you aren't good at a bunch of the shit behind the scenes.
Totally.
That is not celebrated because no one talks about problems that go away. But yes, it'll be interesting. We're talking about Star Wars and big IPs with track records of success and question mark. Tom, I'm seeing you've listed Marvel updates from Kevin Feige.
I have. So as part of this event in Brazil, there were some minor updates. And the one I was most curious about is Blade. I fucking love Blade. Blade is awesome. The Wesley Snipes movies were incredible. When they announced Mahershala Ali coming in as Blade, I was like, oh, fuck yeah, let's go. And as our friend Deadpool recently reminded us, where's that Blade movie?
Oh man, that's been going to hell and back. If you don't know the story,
it has a very troubled production history. It seems as though reportedly the original version of it was going to be much more centered on Blade's daughter, who is was a more prominent character in the comics until fairly recently. And it's gone through production hell. It's a nightmare. But what's interesting is he mentioned it and talked about it and basically said, hey, we're still because there was a theory that it was just going to be announced as canceled because with new Disney ownership, they need to kind of cut some things. So the fact that he said he didn't say that the movie was saved or the series was saved. He said, we want Mahershala Ali's Blade to show up at some point. So there's still hope, but it may be as a character in a thing, like maybe they'll do a Midnight Suns movie or something, and we'll get that. But there was some hope that at least they aren't announcing, no, Mahershala Ali's out as Blade, which is what I was concerned about. Also, spoilers for Multiverse of Madness. Now's your time. And Agatha all along, I guess, to some extent. Like, get out now. Get out now if you want.
I mean,
and then come back
in a minute. Tom's going to do this in 60 seconds. Tom, go fast.
Great. So people are asking lots of questions about the Scarlet Witch. It's very like, where's Poochie? My good friend Wanda, who I'm just sliding on camera here. If you're listening to this, just imagine what Scarlet Witch looks like. Where's Wanda? And even though she kind of definitively died at the end of Multiverse of Madness, Agatha all along has revived a lot of interest in witches in general and the Scarlet Witch. And so when asked, he said, yeah, we are curious about when and where she can come back. So on the table, but no immediate plans, which is good. That's about the right place. She deserves a second shot because that character got a shit ending for the trajectory she was on. Out of spoilers. Spoilers are done. No more spoilies. Miles Morales, they mentioned in terms of showing up in the mainstream MCU as a post Into the Spider-Verse thing. Makes a lot of sense to me. And the X-Men might not show up until after Secret Wars, which I think makes a lot of sense. They've been hinting at them and flirting with them. It's a lot of characters to drop out of nowhere, but given that Secret Wars, in the comics at least, is kind of about remaking the universe, it'd be a deeply convenient way to just be like, they've been here all along. So anyway, that's all the Marvel news from me. Let's travel deep into deep space. Unless, Ryan, you have any immediate thoughts to...
No, I mean, I think Marvel also exists in the category for me where I'm like, cool, show me the money. Like these announcements have gotten so big, and everybody said to roll back budgets in Hollywood, where they're like, hey, and even Disney has acknowledged on multiple fronts, including Marvel and Star Wars, where they're like, we did too much, we need to pull back, we need to focus on quality and do fewer things that are better. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I'm excited for that, and we'll see where stuff goes.
And unfortunately, all of the current phases are building to Secret Wars as the essentially like soft universe reboot, which is also how it served in the comics. Their challenge is they just couldn't get there fast enough. And as a result, instead of like a few movies and then suddenly all the characters we deeply care about are back, it's like, ooh, you're going pretty deep on the bench here, my friends. Maybe move things along. And then, of course, they had their Kang fiasco. So I'm very excited for Secret Wars. Everything until then, I liked Agatha all along. Anyway, on we go.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking a long time to make a thing, let's talk about Mass Effect.
Yeah, Mass Effect from Amazon. They have officially announced that the show is back on track to be made. This is going to be a pretty short report because this is pretty much pure theory. The moment of like announcing something has been greenlit to begin pre-production. But Amazon had signed Mass Effect in 2021. There was supposed to be a Mass Effect TV show. They'd assembled a team. They'd put it in place. It was supposed to happen. And then just everything got real quiet on the Mass Effect front. But they have followed up now by Amazon MGM Studios, where they have said that it's officially in development. They've got Daniel Casey, who's set to write and It's a weird setup on the EPs on this, but I think it's the number of people who have control over the IP at some point. So EP means executive producer. Traditional line of TV, the executive producer is, at least in the first few seasons, the actual showrunner. They run the writer's room. They decide the story. They do the casting. Like, they're the actual boss. It's weird that producer isn't the title, but it's executive producer. However, when you get into later seasons of shows, a lot of the time, the lead actors will negotiate to get an executive producer credit because they're starting to shape the story of their own character, or they're just famous enough that they can ask for one to be in the writer's room. This show's starting out and has 4 EPs that are acknowledged in the Variety article, but only one who's set to write, which makes me think there's the actual kind of showrunner on the floor who's making the decisions, which would be my guess is Daniel Casey. And then there are 3 other people who are executive producing. 2 are from, like, one guy who's, I think his company is making it, another guy who I think is just the name who's attached to it, and then somebody from EA where I'm like, okay, there's your like game person who are all there. Plot details are under wraps, so we know literally nothing other than the team who are making this. I'm interested because it's a weird combination of scripts that are mentioned for the guy who's supposed to actually be writing this. He wrote Fast 9 of the Fast saga. He also wrote Kin, if you remember the robot dog sci-fi movie from like 2018. He wrote that, but he did rewrites on 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is excellent. So he's got a really interesting spread. Some of the other producers include Zreik, who apparently worked at the now defunct Marvel Television unit, where he served as an EP on shows like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, The Punisher, and Legion, and that kind of thing. And then Aria Rad, who's another one of them. He's done Borderlands, Uncharted, Ghost in the Shell. It tends to be like more expensive stuff. So
Aria Rad is like old school Marvel, did the original Spider-Man stuff. He's been around.
Yeah, so he seems to be there as well. So it's been announced. We'll see where it goes. It just falls into that category of cool. Cool. I'm glad it's been announced.
I saw someone pitch Kate Siegel, who is in all of the Mike Flanagan shows. She's his wife. She's awesome in all of them, but as Shepard. And I was like, do that one, please. Because she's fucking rad. And
they have to do twins at the center. We have to get a male and female twin protagonist. They tried it in Andromeda,
and it sucked. So I'm hoping they learned, because that is how they played for Mass Effect Andromeda. Like, we want both siblings to be here, so they just made them twins. But it's entirely possible. But yeah, give me that. Only because Kate Mulgrew is too old for the role now. But hopefully she can
make
voice
her a Krogan.
Someone.
Put Kate Mulgrew in Krogan makeup and let her yell at the lead.
Captain by Captain.
I'm very excited about our version of this show, but we'll see what Amazon.
I watched the hell of it. Well, and I think it was signed. What's interesting is it was signed at a time when The Expanse was wrapping up, and everyone desperately wanted another grounded sci-fi. And Mass Effect fits that bill quite nicely. But the IP was in flux because of the Andromeda was meant to be a transmedia franchise. Andromeda is the most recent Mass Effect game.
Andromeda, yeah, it came out like
takes place
10
in a
years
different galaxy in order to avoid any of the choices you made affecting it too much. You're like a colony ship sent off into deep space.
Because people love when you take the first IP and go, what if we remove all of it?
Yeah. And then also just copy it weirdly. It was a lot of like, oh, we've arrived in new space. There's new ancient aliens we've never heard about. And and I was like, this is all the same. All of the politics are the same. Anyway, that's fine. It's a different story, whatever. But they had books planned. They had like a lot of stuff planned for that. And when it didn't bite, they realized they had to like walk it back. So I think it's probably just been development hell. I will be curious though. Amazon also just tried to make a God of War show and had to go back to the drawing board. That said, they have signed Ron Moore of Battlestar Galactica to come in and run it now. So that should be exciting. But
hey.
Yeah, I will be curious. I love that universe. I'd love to see more stuff in it, but we'll see.
And on a personal excited front, Andor Season 2 also has a launch date. It's coming out in April of 2025. I love Andor. It's my favorite of all of the Star Wars television. It's my favorite of anything Star Wars that has been made since about the 1980s, where it's just great stuff. Anybody out there who's wondering if they should watch Season 1? Yes, you should. You should watch it right now and then watch it again before the Season 2 drops in April of next year.
I haven't finished it. We were enjoying it so much that we were treating it like a fine wine, where we're like, I can't just put this on. And then our child continued to grow. So we need to get back to it because it was just, it's like watching, like it is fine dining. It is such a fulfilling and satisfying watch. But yeah, so I've got till April, I guess. That's good.
You've got a good window. And I'll flag for anybody who's thinking about watching it and they're like, this doesn't seem like fine dining right away. Episode 3. The third episode is where you're like, oh, they hit their stride. They did the first 2 to be like, here's the Star Wars formula from everything else. Okay, we don't have to do that anymore. We got our green light. Here's the series that we're doing for us, and I am so amped. I will eventually do a whole hour-long deep dive into just the first season of Andor because I'm obsessed with it and the theories that I think make it work. But Tom, you got something real cool that you spotted here that I did not see.
Oh, yeah. So Ryan put me on to the works of Sebastian D. Castile a while back, specifically the Greatcoat series, which, go read, watch some Andor and then go read the Greatcoats.
Yeah.
They're amazing. They were a high inspiration for our Curse, Code, and Crown show. Wonderful, wonderful books. Sebastian D. Castile has a second series called Spellslinger that's like I only read the first little bit, but basically like a non-magical person learning to use magic in inventive ways to counteract people who are like slinging spells rather than just everyone else is like, I've got a little bit of magic. And it's like, here's a cool new take on it. And there's a TV show coming for it, which is like, fantasy series get announced all the time, whatever. But it's from Chad John Wick Stahelski, which is very exciting because it's basically a magic gunfighting show to begin with. And also he's a scrappy filmmaker. So that always, when I hear like big fantasy show, I'm like, I don't know, we'll see. And it's like from someone who understands budgets and stunts. I'm like, may we? So Ryan, as a longtime fan of Sebastian D. Castile, I wanted to flag this to you because I figured you'd want to know. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think it's wonderful. And honestly, if it gets us closer to a Greatcoats, gimme.
Hell yes. I'm also excited. This is a really good story to be adapted for TV. I've read the first couple of books in the series, and then I realized when the last ones were coming out, I was like, oh, I need to read all of these in a row so that I remember the exact details for the last 2 books. They're gold. Laura's read them all. She's a really slow reader, and she was still into it because, yeah, the first book is he's the one non-magical kid in the high magic society, and then this smoking, drinking, knife-fighting con woman shows up and teaches him how he can survive dueling school because he learns from her ways that you don't need to know magic to beat people with magic, because if you're smarter, faster, and more bold, you can win. And then the rest of the series is him realizing, oh shit, she's part of an important movement, apprenticing with her and traveling through the world against a big conspiracy as now one of these kind of spell slingers. It's a super cool idea. I love his brain. His stories are great, and Stahelski's really cool. My only concern, I will point out, is, again, this is like, it got announced, but Stahelski's also supposed to be working on Highlander, his Highlander reboot, where the early stuff sounded really cool because their stunt team was working on how would you be a sword fighter working with professional sword fighters, being like, okay, now you've been sword fighting for 900 years. What is the difference between that and a normal person? Like, please make all the stuff, Chad. You're so cool.
Well, I think that's gone to camera, though, I think.
Did it? Oh, sick.
Because Cavill, it's Cavill's only project right now.
Hey! Okay, then it's happening. Golden. No complaints. That's going to be great. Yeah. And then I see your next bullet point.
Oh, yeah. So I was streaming Silent Hill 2 old version a couple days ago, and I'd been points paid to do it as a surfer dude, and I ended up fighting Pyramid Head explaining the plot of the film Lilo and Stitch, which is a favorite of our household. It is Adult Miles' favorite, my wife Adult Miles, her favorite like Disney movie, and Baby Miles, my son, fucking loves it. It was his first like movie that he was obsessed with. So we're a big Lilo and Stitch household, and then they announced they're doing a CGI live action reboot, and we're like, oh. And sure enough, they've shown the CGI Stitch, and he is everything you would fear him to be. And someone on the line pointed out that it's got a bit of the live action Sonic vibe.
That was going to be the joke I was going to make. Human teeth.
And it's just, don't like it. I don't like it. And talking about last week we were talking about Roger Rabbit and stuff. It just reminded me how much I appreciate making a design fit a thing. And I'm sure very talented VFX artists are working on it. Also, it's very hard to judge a final product by early VFX shots and everything else. It's more so just the ongoing Disney thing of take a beautifully animated thing and then just try and stuff it into the sausage casing of reality. Mm-hmm. That I'm like, some things just don't look good in reality to me. And so I love that they got the voice actor / creator back. That's great. It's a great story. The messaging in it's really good. It's very edgy for a kids thing, and hopefully it'll introduce some kids to sci-fi. But also it just deals with family politics we don't see a lot, with an older sister having to raise her younger sister while also being her sister, and child protective services, and also aliens. It's a lot of fun. So I'm still hopeful, but man, hey.
Hopefully they figure out how to make it look good. Yeah.
I might just cut out a picture of Stitch and just hold him up in front of the screen just at all times, just trying to move in front, create perspective for myself, and just run him around.
We'll get a VTuber that we can just put on for you so you can watch the movie VTuber at home where it covers it up.
That's great. And finally, I wanted to follow up on my promise / threat from last week, Matlock Watch.
Hell yeah. What happened with her?
I'm back, baby. This week, Matlock bought condoms.
What?
Yeah. So, I watched episode 2. It opened with a dream sequence, which is a major knock against it. But Matlock is really stressed because she fucked up the dates of the TV show Matlock. They keep talking about the TV show Matlock. That's just going to be a runner. But the form of the show is really starting to come together in terms of the con that she's pulling. And it's still very she's 8 steps ahead of everyone constantly kind of thing. But it's still a lot of fun.
Tom, you're bearing the lead here. How are condoms involved? I have to know.
No.
I need to get to the fireworks factory.
Yeah, you got to work for it. So in order to solve the case, spoilers for episode 2 of Matlock, they had to prove that a video had been doctored in a convenience store because there was someone who had murdered a lady in a back alley. There was a frame job, but they had photos of him buying the condoms they found next to the body so they're look, that's the guy. He did it. But Matlock realized that she's short and he's short. So she went and did a whole my retirement home is a happening place. And the lady behind the counter is like, oh, that's great. Get it, girl. She's like, I
think
will.
Kathy Bates fucks. That makes sense to me.
Oh, yeah. 100% Kathy Bates fucks. We've seen Misery. Anyway, she's like, I'm going to reach for these condoms at the top. You take a photo for my friends. And she's smiling, thumbs up, and reaching for condoms, which proves that someone of her height and also the accused's height could not have reached the condoms the way the video showed. And then the witness breaks on the stand. But what's really interesting about it from a Matlock structural perspective is they don't have her, because she's not the lead prosecutor. She's like a junior associate at this law firm. So they still have the like, and then the suspect breaks down on the stand, but it's by proxy. It's like she provides the evidence that allows the lawyer to break the person on the stand. But the lawyer is one of the people she's investigating. So how can she lead these double lives? It's all getting so confusing. But yeah, Kathy Bates continues to be a delight, and I'll keep you up to date. But yeah, this week was all about getting passcodes so they learn more about this law firm.
Yep, we will keep Matlock Watch going on. Tom, when you
Thank
finish episode 1, we will set aside a deep review. We will do a full review episode of Matlock season 1, and we will let you walk us through it.
Well,
in even
so I'm
greater
going to throw a
perspective.
prediction out in old Garbage Town style. I suspect that at the end of season 1, they're going to get one of the 3 suspect lawyers on side after they get revealed and shit. And then they'll have one more teammate as they try and entrap the other one. Because they're already playing like people starting to figure out those holes in her story thing. So they're moving along, which is good because you can't trust you're going to have 10,000 seasons in modern times. But that's
Kathy
my
Bates
guess.
is not going to do this for 15 years.
No. But it's great. She's doing a great job. And she's playing the like doddering old Matlock / super spy Matlock combo very well. It is perfect for her skill set. So I love you, Kathy Bates. Keep it up. Congratulations on your condoms. She bought condoms and a Wicked doll. I don't know what the combination there is. I don't know what link there is between those two things, but those are the 2 things she was buying at the bodega.
Tremendously unfortunate product placement at that point. Oh, incredible. All right, so it's time for us to switch over to some tabletop news. We're going to go through a couple of items here. We'll see how far we go, and then we'll carry stuff over if we don't get to it. One thing I was excited about, this was announced pretty much today. Drive-Thru RPG has announced that they're including an AI filter. So if you're going to Drive-Thru RPG to pick up RPG supplements, they already have a crackdown on anything that's fully AI, but this actually lets you go through, and if you want to filter by stuff, to make sure it includes no AI whatsoever, no AI art, no AI writing, no AI assistance, stuff that is known to include some AI, or you can look for stuff that might be questionable in terms of AI and filter those out. So if you're going to Drive-Thru RPG and you want to get a specific game and you want to support people who are fully doing the art with artists who are telling these stories themselves who don't have any AI assistance, they're really actively trying to participate in that process to allow you to be able to do that as a consumer, which I think is very, very admirable. And again, they already had stuff for fully AI things. This is really letting you break down and categorize anything to find out exactly how much AI is in it, because they've always allowed some. But this lets you know one way or the other, which I think is great. We need that kind of transparency for us to be less afraid of our computer and tech overlords.
100%. And, as someone who has a human-made RPG on drivethrurpg.com, it is, I think it's a nice safety to have. And honestly, I'd prefer it for, film, television, etc. as well. Just because it's like knowing what's in a beverage you're drinking or anything else. It's just nice to know so you can make your own decisions on how you want to consume content.
The next thing for anybody who is playing the Star Wars Unlimited trading card game, the stats on this are absolutely
launched. It's very new.
Cool. Well, for anybody who's checking out this cool new thing, it's just like every other game that's launching. They've banned a major card that has overtaken the entire game. This came out as the first card banned. The running joke that I really like from Polygon was that Boba Fett is now, in fact, quite limited instead of being in the Star Wars Unlimited card game. But the Boba Fett card has been suspended from play because it was
nerfed.
So dominating play. The craziest thing when they dive into the numbers on this for anybody who is playing that was the Boba Fett card in question, which is a leader card, was included in the decks of 55% of winners in a recent competitive tournament. And the game includes 54 leader cards. So to have almost 60% of people who are winning in your tournament play one of 54 cards as a leader is a level of balance that I'm like, good for you to sort this out. I'm glad they're moving quickly on this. It is the tricky thing with these card games for people who are diving in, like no question. It's just the metas shift so drastically. Of course, play with them in your fun at-home games, but they're making the move for this. They may be able to return him from suspension in the future, but for right now, he has been suspended from competitive tournament play.
Yeah, now you too will be like a blinded Han Solo saying, Boba Fett, where? And the answer is not in anyone's decks. It's gone.
I want to boo, but I liked it too much. Games Workshop news. There is a new Phoenix Lord model that has been revealed. Tom, we're talking Warhammer 40K.
Wait,
Are you aware
Simon
of the Phoenix
Kinberg
Lords?
make this one?
I mean, he'll get the series. He'll get the series for sure. He needs a third sci-fi property to be really committing to.
Yeah, I like it.
Just so he can have everything I want to. You and me. But the Phoenix Lords, if you follow 40K or if you don't, there's the Eldar or the Aeldari, depending on how old you are. But
Space
they
elves.
have the equivalent of their Primarchs. They kind of have these 5 or 6 like leaders that travel through the warp and show up from the webway randomly to be super badasses. They originally had Mogun Ra, who is like a Deathstalker. He just looks like death. It's the coolest model, covered in bones, like a big black cloak and a huge. It looks like a combination between a rocket launcher, a guitar, and a scythe. And they've now got Fuegan the Fire Dragon. They've got the model has been released. There are photos of it. It looks super, super cool. He's got all his weapons. I love when they can step into an almost fantasy design in the model looks in the 40K range, and the Eldari really allow for it. So no release day yet, but do you know what I'll say about Games Workshop? When they show you a model, it's going to happen. There will be that model, and it will sell out on the first day, and you will not be able to get it until 6 to 9 months later. But 9 months later, you're pretty happy when you get it. And if you order one pre-order, do it online, because if you order it through your store will get shorted a couple of models, then you won't get one. And that's why I didn't have Lionel Johnson. And you know what? Fuck you, everybody. I need that Lionel Johnson, and it was not right that I had to wait more time. And I have him now, but I was less happy when I got him. He was supposed to come with Blade Guard that I didn't get anyways. The important thing is Fuegan's going to be available. Order online.
If there's anything we know about our boy Lionel Johnson, sometimes it takes him a while to get to places. He's lost in forests. He's having adventures. And you know what? Fuegan's got to come through the warp. You know, that takes time. You got to stop for snacks along the way. It's like a Tim Hortons somewhere in the webway to get some Tim bits for your Phoenix Lord arrival. But
he could double toast his bagel himself.
100%. Support your local model shops, but if you're worried about pre-orders, just make sure you get yours.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't live in Ryan's version of Wing Commander regret, you know?
Yeah, don't. Show up on the day the pre-orders come in so that you're the 2 guys who knew to show up early and they got models and then I didn't. And I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter at all.
No, it's good. It's good. There's one thing we know about Dark Angels, not bitter.
Nope.
No regrets.
And then the last thing I
regrets.
will flag is they revealed there is a Christmas model every year that comes from Games Workshop. We did a 40K adventure that was Christmas themed, featuring exactly this character in
The Nightmare
spirit
Before
run by
Squigmas.
Nightmare Before Squigmas. It's available in our One Shots podcast. But the Red Gobbo, who is a tiny goblin who celebrates Squigmas every year, they released a Red Gobbo model. The model's a lot of fun every year. It's just a fun thing to paint. You got it. He's running around snowmen and all that kind of stuff. But they released an accompanying video with it that I am deeply obsessed with, because for years Games Workshop, there were running jokes that whoever ran Games Workshop was James Workshop, and it was just a bad joke that haunted the internet for a long time until Games Workshop hired one of their voiceover guys who did audiobooks to be James Workshop. So he releases a Christmas video every year celebrating himself, because he's this weird blowhard character that's incredibly dislikable and tremendously egotistical. And they also, and like they've had more fun with that as time has gone on. They released a video when the Votan came out, who are this like the space dwarves, and they were so overpowered that the entire competitive community was like they're banned from tournaments. And Games Workshop had to basically retroact and correct the rulebook. The day the rulebook came out, they'd rewritten the rulebook and released it online the day before. And they filmed a video with James Workshop being like, I'd made this army just for me because I wanted to win every game, and I don't know why you guys have a problem with it. It's like a clear walk back, but with a sense of humor. This year, it is the most unhinged James Workshop video I've ever seen, because it starts off with James Workshop doing his regular Christmas message, then talking about how he sculpted a model of himself, and they're cutting to him doing these things. And when he talks about sculpting a model of himself for Christmas, he's playing with mashed potatoes and like using a spoon to carve a face into mashed potatoes. And then he's like, and now it's time to reveal the model. And they give him the Christmas Red Gobbo model, and he looks at it and goes, no, I made a model of me. I made a model. I didn't make a model. I made a model of me. And it becomes a David Lynchian nightmare of him flashing back to like drawing things and not knowing what's happening and screaming and getting scared. And it gets so abstract. And then it's just over. They're like, I hope you like Red Gobbo.
Sounds like a Too Many Cooks of Games Workshop, just a descent into madness.
Yeah, it's that meme of saying that like the Gen Z kid got to direct this ad. Only this one, I was like, this kid's cool.
Well, I love the Red Goblin. I mean, like Warhammer. If you go a ways back, Warhammer was meant to be kind of satirical and a bit of a send up, and it was always a little bit because being a British company, quirky, a little goofy. Some of the early design work falls closer to the like the Discworld covers in terms of just like fucking weird details and things. However, over time, as the popularity grew, a little bit of that goofiness kind of fell off as it got grimdark, capital G grimdark. And so I always love when stuff like this kind of like seeps in through the edges, where it's just these little silly moments and these little goofy things. And I gotta say, like as a former communications consultant, I cannot stress enough how a company that is willing to take the piss out of itself when it loses, how valuable that is and how rare that is. Because my God, I mean, I see this mostly from the video game community, but when someone really fucks up a video game launch or something, it's all these really self-important like statements and other things. And to the Votan piece, just come out and be like, we done goofed. That's nice. Because really, I'm not going to like you more either way. Like you've already, you're taking the L, but if you do it in a way that acknowledges you done fucked up and makes it entertaining, you're giving me a gift of kicking yourself in the dick. And that's funny to me, as opposed to being like, listen, it's difficult to balance a game. It's like, we all know that. Yeah, I'm still pissed off. I have to buy a new book. So this is great. I love this. More of this, less like, it's hard for us too. We know you gave us $80 and you can't play the thing, but like, what about me?
Yeah, it's hard to find good staff. No, you pay them more, and then you get. There are a lot of really good game designers out there. I mean, I want to make it. I mean, they're not working for Star Wars: The Unlimited Trading Card Game, but like they're available elsewhere.
A similar example of this actually that's just been happening over on the Call of Duty front is they released there was a perk that came with the game that was just wildly overpowered, where if you died when you respawned, you saw the enemies through the walls for a little bit. But that little bit was like deeply too long. And it's interesting because to my mind, for a lot of these things, right? Like you always think about like, and then we released it because as a kid who grew up on like cartridge games, like you get what's on the cartridge. It doesn't matter that Oddjob is too short and has a competitive advantage in the GoldenEye sphere, as well as Civilian Number 2. It's just what you got. We can't fix it. It's done. Whereas now it's a rolling ball, and particularly for rules on competitive card games or Warhammer, anything where there's tournaments. Like it's one thing to adjust D&D rules for balance, but ultimately that's like player versus DM. So who cares? When it's competitive, like with a trading card game, Magic, all those things, it's so fucking tough. And I always appreciate when a developer or to the Boba Fett ban, but also to this Call of Duty ban, just coming out and be like, yeah, we fucked up. We're going to fix it. It's going to suck though for all of you who are using it. That's just the way it is. Like, it's like being an umpire or referee. Every call you make is the wrong call to somebody, but you just got to make them. And I deeply respect when people do that. So good on you, game developers. Good on you.
Yeah, when you make them promptly and you do so acknowledging the error. And I mean, but extra bonus, as we've said, if you can also be funny about it and make fun of yourself. Even if people are so angry that they're like, fuck this game, I'm out of here, and they kind of go into the distance, I find those changes in those things are the reasons that I can justify coming back later when I want to. Because if I get the high and mighty, like, arrogant response, then I tend to stay away from the property altogether. Whereas I'm like, okay, you had a sense of humor. Even if I was like, I'm going to take my money and play somewhere else, you made me all grumpy. Then, like, a year from now when I'm not grumpy, and I'm like, I missed that game. I'm like, they were fun. Okay, I'll go back.
Well, and you look at, the troubled launches of games like Cyberpunk 2077 or No Man's Sky, which is one of the most interesting ones to me, because, like, No Man's Sky was a small indie project that wildly overpromised. But they have updated that game for free for 1 million years. It's absolutely incredible. It's won over the hearts and minds. It's a stunning work of art. It works in VR. They keep releasing free updates like maniacs. But it's because they were just like, yeah, we're committed to fixing this, and we're going to try and deliver the experience that we imagined when we can. But the thing that always gets me is like when you're not going to win over the people who are furious. So like if all of the decks, if I spent all my money building Boba Fett themed decks, and then you take away Boba Fett, I am probably out, and nothing you can say or do is going to keep me. Who you need to keep is the people around me who are like, oh, that kind of sucks, and he really fucked over my friend Tom. But like, yeah, I couldn't beat him. Like, thank you for balancing the game. And I think that's also something people are scared of, which is like losing the people. And we see this with lots of stuff, but like if someone is furious and hates the thing you're making, you're probably not going to win them back, but you can win the people who are in the middle going like, I don't know, maybe this is for me, maybe this isn't. I was one of those people for Cyberpunk where it's like, oh man, I really like the ideas behind this, but it's lagging so much I can't play it right now, but I'll be back. So anyway, again, difficult balances all around. But speaking of difficult balances to competitive gaming, the big dog has also undergone a pretty big flip, pretty big transformation. Ryan, what's going on with Magic the Gathering?
Yes, this is a very, very big announcement, and we're not going to be able to dive too deep into this because you and I don't live and breathe Magic, but the thing we need to acknowledge and the thing that they've pushed is Universes Beyond are a number of releases every year that have popped up where they brought in other IPs. They have announced now, starting in, I think, 2025, that Universes Beyond cards will be legal in standard format. Reading one of the articles, they're talking about Tales of Middle-earth was probably the big thing that pushed this over the edge because the Lord of the Rings set sold like absolute crazy. Some of that was around, if anybody remembers, chasing the biggest card that was going to be worth a fortune because there was one true
Post
One Ring
Malone's
card.
One Ring.
Yep. But the set was designed to work in the modern format, just not all the other formats. And they acknowledge as a company, they're like, oh, the intention is to bring new people in who played Lord of the Rings or who like Lord of the Rings to be like, oh, I'm going to try Magic because I can get a Lord of the Rings deck in Magic. And also because it was designed for modern to allow people who play Magic already to have to get some Lord of the Rings cards to get the top tier stuff. But one of the big problems was bringing in new people who like Lord of the Rings and putting them into modern format, put them into the most competitive, high cost, and complicated versions of the game possible, and the cards didn't carry over to the other formats. So they're saying, like, this got people to play, and then they had the worst possible time for new players moving forwards. Yep. Whereas their hope is allowing this to also carry over to other formats like Standard or Pioneer or these other things. If you just built a deck out of the cards from your favorite universe, these other types of games, at least from their idea, is they're easier. You'll have a deck that can actually play a competitive game, whereas if you just showed up with the Lord of the Rings deck to a modern thing, that you would just get crushed into the ground every time. So
right.
There's a lot of big question marks there. Some people are very excited, some people are not, but that's the approximate news for the big thing. So yeah, mixed at best. People are all over the place on this. I think it's one of those things where there's going to be a lot of people who have a lot of feelings before it happens, and then we'll see how this actually affects the viability of the game as a whole. Does it change anything? I think like a lot of things, people get really mad and it can affect the tournament scene, but the tournament scene is the tip of the iceberg over the actual people playing Magic with physical cards at home.
And again, ultimately, the second things get competitive, professionally competitive, opinions shift pretty hard because it's not just, is this good for the sport? It's, is this good for me and how I play? And you see this even in competitive sports. There are a bunch of changes to the way baseball is played for the first time like a million years, because baseball is a highly almost mythically like don't touch it, don't look too closely at it thing. And it meant teams had to drastically change how they were playing because, you know, the rules came in and people were fucking livid, particularly because there's a lot of rules nerds and a lot of stat nerds in baseball who are like, this is going to fuck everything I know to be true about baseball. And I got to tell you, as a longtime baseball fan, it's a hell of a lot more fun to watch now. Because it just tightened the game up. It was specifically pitch count, so you had to throw within a certain amount of time. You couldn't just dick around on the mound for like 9 years before throwing a ball. And so a lot of pain up front, a lot of kerfuffle, everything else. And now all the commentary as well that I've heard, at least from major commentators, is like, oh yeah, this is great. this is much better.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Also, I would implore you, if you're at all a fan of Lord of the Rings, go check out the art from that Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings thing. They really leaned into like, we're going to do our own take on this, and it is some fucking gorgeous stuff. Like I'm always kind of mad at like the Wish.com versions of things where like if you get Lord of the Rings but you don't have the license, so everyone just kind of looks like, the Gandalf you have at home. It's always just disappointing to me when people are doing pale echoes of like a film that's very iconic. And so I love when people are just like, no, fuck it. It's completely different. Here's our take on the stuff. And it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning art. So yeah, check that out.
Check those out. It's good stuff. And this is probably where we got to call this for this week. So Tom, what is the nerdy thing you've got coming up this week? What's the next exciting nerd thing for you?
I picked up Absolute Superman when it came out last Wednesday, and I haven't had a chance to sit down and read it yet. I've got a ritual I don't usually get to partake in, where I'll like throw on a record and go sit in the outer living room, just like drink a coffee and read a comic book. It is rare. I have to get up early so that like Miles is still asleep, but it's a really beautiful. I read all of Kieran Gillen's Die that way, and it was fucking great. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And then I can do my deep dive on the Absolute universe and talk you through kind of the three big launches with Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. But I'm excited. I got some really specific views on Superman in general and what I do and don't like about a Superman. So I'm very curious to see how this one plays. It's an amazing writing, illustrating duo. It's Jason Aaron, and I can't for the life of me remember who illustrated it, which is a deep shame. So I'm going to look that up right now. But yeah, so that is what I am most looking forward to this week, I think. How about you, Ryan?
Cool. I am starting to record. We're going to start in 48 hours from our recording date now, but I am going to start recording the Warhammer 40K lore podcast that we've been talking about for a very long time. So I picked up the encyclopedia. What is this? I lied. I picked up The Ultimate Guide to Warhammer 40K. There's a big hardcover book. It was my last purchase for this. It was written by Guy Haley and Gav Thorpe. So it's unofficial, but in the best way. Well, it's officially licensed, but it's a lot of pictures of the models, including info from Guy Haley and Gav Thorpe, who have written so many novels and defined so much lore of Warhammer from the late 90s until now. I'm very excited to have got that last little piece of my collection and start recording that with Dell. So that's my nerdy thing.
And just to wrap mine out, it's Rafa Sandoval is the illustrator on Absolute Superman, and Die is written by Kieran Gillen but illustrated by the incredible Stephanie Hans. And I want to make sure that I'm shouting out both folks. I always remember writer names because that come from that, but graphic novels are a marriage of the two, so I definitely want to make sure we're giving equal credit where it's due. So good stuff. I'm excited to hear the 40K. I don't know which name we're going with, so I'm just going to say broadly 40K lore podcast. And I
think we're going with the Warhammer 40K lore podcast, unless that gets shut down somehow. So hell yeah, we'll have that out in the next couple of weeks. Very exciting. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back next week with even more nerd news for the nerds and the nerd curious.
Yes, absolutely. As is my way, nerd long and nerd.
Yeah, nerd hard. Thanks for tuning in to Nerd News. This series is produced by Dum Dums and Dice, edited by Ryan LaPlante, and our audio is mixed by Laura Hamstra. You can follow us on any social media platform at Dum Dum Dice. Support us on our Patreon at patreon.com/dumdumdice, or buy cool merch from our website, dumdumdice.com. Thanks for joining us, and stay nerdy. Dum Dums and Dice has to give a special thank you to the supreme beings of our Patreon at this time: Christopher Little, George Dolby, Gavin and Abby McDonald, Logan, Fire Unfriendly, Grandma Likes D&D, Alan, Stabby Stranger, Glitch Trick, Flynn1138, Alarain Okapi, Schrodinger's Pepper, Madre de Gatos, Lady Maiden, Mithrian, Garbo Ape, Sam Schaefer, Waffle Marine, Dagger Rain, Rob L, Dia De Los Hoodless, Squishy Werewolf, Remy Funky Head, Accent Therapeutic Services in Florence, Kentucky, Lael, Shulzari, The Long Family, Jordan Oliver, Richard Wright, Brittany Fenwick, Alex Parr, Dragonfly, The Body Barrelers, Megan Werner, A Man Out of Time, Curtis at FingerTechRobotics.com, Panda24NN, Shendra D, Your Homeboy Bones, Ellis Hatch, Odigenous, Beef Not Cheese, Kai Koa, Squire Solaire, Sandy Sassy Pants, Adam, Amira Lockhart, James Molina, Nick Hemsing, and Jill and Noel LaPlante. If you want your name to be added to this list, you can join our Patreon too at patreon.com/dumdumdice. Thanks to them, and a little bit of thanks to you.